What is a ghost lineage?
Okay, family, this is big. You might want to sit down for this. Scientists that have been studying a DNA gene of a human that we don't even have records of.
What can scientists learn from a single bone?
Dig this. This ancient archaic human lived on Earth about 500,000 years ago.
History, and so there's lots of cool stuff we find, lots of new species.
About 2 to 20% of modern day West Africans possess this ghost gene.
Ghost lineages exist throughout the fossil record. Take the coelacanth. Coelacanths are ancient, unusual-looking fish that go way back in the fossil record. There are coelacanth fossils spanning a massive 300 million years, from the Devonian all the way through the Cretaceous. In 1938, off the coast of South Africa, museum curator Marjorie Courtenay-Latimer saw something strange in a fisherman's catch. Lo and behold, tens of millions of years with no fossil evidence, and then here it is. This 65 million year gap is the ghost lineage of the coelacanth.
What if everything we were taught about human evolution was only half the story? What if buried inside your DNA right now there is a signal, a biological echo from a species of human being that has never been found in any fossil, never been named in any textbook, and never appeared in any archaeological record we have ever uncovered? A species so ancient, so distinct, and so completely erased from the physical world that the only place they still exist is inside us, encoded in our genetics like a message from a civilization that was wiped from the earth before history had a name. Scientists call it the ghost lineage. And in 2020, geneticists at the University of California published a paper that sent quiet shockwaves through the scientific community. A paper that confirmed what a handful of researchers had suspected for years. There is a third human species in our DNA. Not Neanderthal, not Denisovan, something else. Something unnamed. Something that mainstream science has not yet been able to explain, and something that when you pull the thread all the way back, begins to suggest that the story of humanity is far older, far stranger, and far more extraordinary than anything we have ever been told. Stay with me, because this is the pulse of the past, and it is beating inside you right now.
Before we go deeper, let us establish exactly what a ghost lineage is, because this is not science fiction and it is not fringe theory. This is peer-reviewed, published, mainstream genetics. A ghost lineage, in scientific terms, refers to a population or species whose existence is inferred entirely from the genetic data of modern living humans, with zero physical fossil evidence to support it. In other words, we know they existed because we carry their DNA, but we have never found their bones, their tools, their cities, or their graves. They are a biological ghost, present in the code of life, but invisible in the physical record of the Earth. The first major ghost lineage discovery came when scientists began sequencing the Denisovan genome from a single finger bone found in a Siberian cave in 2008. What they found shattered the two-species model of human evolution that had dominated science for over a century. We were not just the descendants of Homo sapiens evolving in Africa. We were a hybrid species, carrying genetic contributions from at least two other human groups, Neanderthals and Denisovans, who had interbred with our ancestors at different points across tens of thousands of years. But even that discovery, revolutionary as it was only the beginning, because when researchers turned their genetic tools toward the populations of West Africa and the islands of Melanesia in the Pacific, they found something that did not fit the Neanderthal model, did not fit the Denisovan model, and did not fit any known human species we have ever cataloged. They found the third signal. They found the ghost.
The 2020 study published in Science Advances, led by geneticist Arun Durvasula and population geneticist Simon Gravel, focused on four modern West African populations: the Yoruba of Nigeria, the Mende of Sierra Leone, the Gambians, and the Esan people.
What the researchers found when they analyzed the genomes of these populations was a statistical anomaly so significant that it could not be explained by any known pattern of human migration or interbreeding. Approximately 2 to 19% of the genetic ancestry of these West African groups traces back to an archaic human population that diverged from the modern human lineage somewhere between 360,000 and 1 million years ago. Let that number breathe for a moment. 1 million years ago. That is before Homo sapiens existed as a species. That is before Neanderthals as we know them existed in Europe. That is a branch of the human family tree so ancient and so distinct that it represents an entirely separate evolutionary journey, one that ran parallel to ours for hundreds of thousands of years before the two lineages collided and merged. And the most extraordinary part of this discovery is not just the age of the signal. It is the fact that no fossil of this population has ever been found. No skull, no tooth, no fragment of bone. They lived, they thrived, they evolved, they interbred with our ancestors, and then they vanished, leaving nothing behind except the genetic code that now runs silently in the blood of millions of people across West Africa and, potentially, through subsequent migrations, in populations across the entire world.
Now let us travel to the other side of the world, to the islands of Melanesia, Papua New Guinea, and the Aboriginal populations of Australia, because here the Ghost Lineage story gets a second chapter that is equally extraordinary. Studies analyzing the genomes of Melanesian populations have found a separate archaic signal, distinct from both the West African ghost and from Denisovans, suggesting that there was not one lost human species interbred into our ancestry, but potentially multiple, distributed across different parts of the world, like regional chapters of a global story that was never written down. The Melanesian signal is particularly striking because it appears in populations that represent some of the oldest continuous human lineages on Earth. The Aboriginal Australians carry genetic heritage that stretches back over 60,000 years without significant interruption, making them the oldest living civilization in terms of continuous cultural and biological heritage. And yet, woven into that ancient heritage is a signal from something older still, a genetic whisper from a population that was already ancient when our ancestors first arrived on those shores. What does this mean in the context of human history? It means that wherever modern humans traveled as they spread out of Africa and across the globe, they kept encountering other humans, other species, other people who were already there, already established, already ancient. And in almost every case, instead of complete replacement, there was contact, there was interbreeding, and there was absorption. The ghost lineages were not destroyed, they were incorporated, they became part of us. Here is where the science stops being comfortable and starts being profound, because the forbidden genetics question is this. If these ghost populations existed for hundreds of thousands of years, if they were genetically distinct enough to be classified as separate species or subspecies, if they survived long enough to interbreed with modern Homo sapiens across multiple continents and multiple time periods, then what were they doing during all that time? A species that survives for 300,000, 500,000, or even 1 million years is not a primitive creature stumbling through the wilderness. That is a successful, adaptive, resilient form of intelligent life. And intelligence over that kind of time span builds things. It develops language, it develops social structure, it develops technology, and it leaves traces in the landscape. So where are those traces? This is the question that the genetic discovery forces us to ask, and it is the question that connects the ghost lineage directly to the broader mystery of ancient infrastructure and impossible engineering. Because if a population of archaic humans existed in West Africa for hundreds of thousands of years before modern humans arrived, is it possible that some of the oldest stone structures found across sub-Saharan Africa, structures that have defied dating and attribution for generations, were not built by Homo sapiens at all? Is it possible that what we are calling anomalous ancient architecture is actually the fingerprint of the ghost?
Across southern Africa, Particularly in the regions of Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and South Africa, there are tens of thousands of ancient stone structures that have puzzled researchers for over a century. The most famous of these is Great Zimbabwe, the massive dry stone complex that gave the modern nation of Zimbabwe its name. Mainstream archaeology attributes Great Zimbabwe to the Shona civilization, dating the main construction phase to somewhere between the 11th and 15th century CE. But underneath and around the main structures, there are foundation layers and stone arrangements that have been dated to a significantly earlier period, layers that do not fit the Shona attribution and that point to a construction tradition stretching back into a time before the historical record begins. Beyond Great Zimbabwe, researcher and author Michael Tellinger has documented what he calls the Adams Calendar site and thousands of surrounding circular stone ruins in the Mpumalanga region of South Africa, which he argues represent the remnants of a civilization far older than any mainstream model accounts for. Geologist and archaeoastronomer Johann Heine, who co-authored research on Adams Calendar, suggested the main site could be up to 75,000 years old based on its astronomical alignments with the rising and setting positions of the sun at different periods in the Earth's precession cycle. 75,000 years old. That places the construction of these structures squarely within the time period when both modern Homo sapiens and Ghost Lineage populations were coexisting across the African continent. The Ghost Lineage was not just a biological event, it may have been a civilizational one.
Every Ghost Lineage story ends the same way. The population disappears, not gradually, not through slow evolutionary replacement, but in a way that leaves no physical trace. No mass grave, no city of ruins clearly attributable to them, nothing except the genetic signal they left behind in the people who absorbed them. This pattern, repeated across West Africa, Melanesia, and potentially other regions we have not yet fully analyzed, points to a catastrophic event, or series of events, that the ancient world called the Great Flood, the Deluge, the Blackout. Not necessarily a single global flood in the literal sense, though the geological evidence for catastrophic sea level rises at the end of the last ice age is very well documented, but a civilizational blackout, a collapse so total and so rapid that entire populations, entire ways of knowing and building and living were erased from the physical record, while their biological contributions survived in the only archive that a catastrophe cannot burn, the human genome. The Ghost Lineage did not just survive in our DNA by accident. They survived because some of their people merged with ours before the end came, and the things they knew, the engineering, the acoustic science, the understanding of stone and frequency and earth, may have survived too, passed down not in books, but in tradition, in ritual, in the hands of builders who no longer remembered where the knowledge originally came from. Consider this for a moment. If you carry Neanderthal DNA, and statistically, if you are of non-African descent, you carry between 1% and 4% Neanderthal genetics, then you are not entirely Homo sapiens. You are a living archive. You are a biological library containing the genetic contribution of a species that went extinct 40,000 years ago. And if the Ghost Lineage of West Africa is confirmed, and the science strongly suggests that it will be, then millions of people across the world carry the biological heartbeat of a species that has never been named, never been found, and never been given a place in the history we were taught. This is the most intimate version of the hidden heartbeat. It is not carved in stone or buried under sand. It is written in the language of life itself, in the four-letter alphabet of adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, repeating in every cell of your body, carrying a message from the deep past that science is only now beginning to decode. You are not just a person. You are a palimpsest, a document written over and over by different hands across hundreds of thousands of years, and the oldest writing is still there, underneath everything else, waiting to be read.
The Ghost Lineage is not just a scientific discovery, it is a philosophical revolution. It tells us that the story of humanity is longer, richer, and more complex than any single civilization, any single species, or any single narrative has ever captured. It tells us that we have been here before, in different forms, under different names, building different things, and that the catastrophes that ended those chapters did not end the story. They just turned the page. History is not a straight line from primitive to advanced. It is a spiral.
circling back through loss and rediscovery, through extinction and absorption, through the forgetting and the remembering. The ghost lineage was forgotten, but it was never gone. It is in the stone of the Barabar caves. It is in the ruins of Great Zimbabwe. It is in the acoustic chambers of Malta, and it is in you. The pulse of the past is still beating. I am your host, and this is The Hidden Heartbeat. Step into the archive, subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and never stop asking the questions that history forgot to answer. The ghost is not dead. It is waiting.